Welcome back to Night Flight. I'm Judith Koba, and today I have Beth Martens with me. BethMartens.com is her website. She also has a very nice YouTube channel. Please subscribe to her. That YouTube channel is also called Beth Martens, and she has written a book which is called Journey. And we are going to talk about her journey today. Beth, welcome.
Thank you so much, Judith. It's really nice to be here with you. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, no problem. And you have been on my radar for quite a while, and then you get distracted and somehow, but you know how that happened? Ole Dammergaard emailed me.
Oh, fantastic. That's awesome. Oh, he's so good.
And
Yeah, I noticed.
And he suggested that I ask you. And then
Perfect.
I thought, man, yeah, I wanted to do that a long time.
That's awesome. I noticed you've also interviewed Ole a few times. So I thought to myself, I wondered if that was our connection there.
Yeah, it was. Ole said Beth is a good guest for you. You should really email her.
Oh, fantastic. That's really great.
So Beth, for those listeners who do not know you, and in the wild, wild west of YouTube, that is certainly possible. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I understand you worked in the corporate world, were quite successful, and then what happened?
Yeah, I was there with my family's business, and I was their vice president, working in a capacity that had a lot of responsibilities. And I love responsibility, but I like it also to be full of purpose rather than purposeless. And that's what I found in the marketing corporate world, that we were working for nameless, faceless clients. They were incredibly demanding, and I could never see anything really good come out of all of that work that I put in. So instead of just getting out of it, which would have been, if I was my coach back then, I would have said, Beth, find a way out of it. This is hurting you. It's taking your life away, taking your happiness away. At the same time, I was traveling to India every year. I was studying spirituality, meditation. I was starting to give workshops. So I was really pulled in two different directions. I had this double life I was leading where, the business world expected me to show up in a suit and not say anything about the esoteric subjects I was interested in. And then I was into the whole, spiritual community. I had a guru, white bearded guy on a mountain, very typical. Turned out to be a pedophile. That's also typical, unfortunately. Yeah. And so instead of just consciously deciding to get out, I got really sick. Sometimes I say I invented a stage 4 lymphoma. Little tongue in cheek there, just to say that was my unconscious way out of it. I knew I needed to get out, and I had a lot of loyalty to my family's business at the time. I couldn't see a way to just leave. Didn't seem like an option. So instead, I got really, really sick, and I had to fight for my life for 3 years. Went through a number of different treatments. At first, I tried to avoid all of the conventional treatments, but the natural stuff wasn't working well enough. It was working if I had $1 million and I could, just have all of that at my disposal. I probably could have got there that way. But instead I had a naturopath say, go home, do radiation or chemo or whatever it is that they offer you. And I actually had a near-death experience doing that chemo. It was so severe that it brought me to a point where I thought I was not going to live through the night. And it was at that time I completely surrendered to dying. I was, fighting and fighting and fighting, and it was always just raw, real warrior-like. And I hit that day in my life where it was all gone. I didn't have any hope left. I just let go, fell into what I thought was death. And I had quite an awakening in that. I didn't die at all. In fact, I went into remission from it. Just, I think, by getting that energy back from the, being afraid to die, it consumes your life. It actually sucks the life right out of you. So surrendering to death, I got that energy back. If I had to guess what happened, I had major revelations about who I am, what my purpose is, who my people are. And I went on after 18 months, though I was re-diagnosed. I couldn't recover from all the chemo that I'd been through. And there I was on a second round. I was told I was not going to survive it. And I was offered a stem cell transplant, giving me half a chance to live through it. So when half the people were dying of that, I thought, well, maybe that's actually not the way I want to die. It's extremely violent. They almost kill you with chemo, and then they have harvested your stem cells and they give them back to you with the chance, or that, hoping that you're going to pick up and create new life from there. But it's pretty bleak. It's a year of isolation, total isolation to start out with. And I thought, you know what? I don't think this is my path. If it's my time to die, I'm just going to go and allow that to happen.
Yeah.
And it was at that point where I discovered Carolyn Miss's work. Are you familiar with her at all? No? Oh, you'd love it, Judith. She wrote The Sacred Contracts and a bunch of other books, but it just happened to be she published that minute, and I'd already been following her work and getting a lot out of it. So at that point, I didn't even know what the book was about. I just grabbed it off the shelf and began to really work through it. It turned out to be about archetypes and the way that the life purpose shows up through those archetypes, how you can start to, and now this is my language, but how you can start to map consciousness through archetypes. And I found the one archetype that was sucking the life out of me. It was the rebel. I was super out of alignment with that rebel, being a rebel without a cause. And worse than that, I had turned around and just said, okay, time out for the rebel. You don't get to be part of my life anymore. You don't make my decisions or cause trouble in my life anymore. And that was a huge loss of energy for me, because I am a rebel at heart. And I can't just cut the head of that rebel and think I'm going to be happy or be able to survive it. So, once tapping into that archetype energy, I saw the deep, dark shadow that I had. I awakened that shadow, and I went from being a dying person to a living person practically overnight. It was literally that quick. And, it took some time to fully recover again, but I never had to look back after that.
And then you gave the rebel a cause.
And then I gave the rebel a cause. You got it. You totally got it. Exactly. I never did go back to work in the corporate world. I continued to do the things that I was trained for in business. I'm now a business coach, and added all the spirituality that I also had learned into the mix, because you can't just expect to make a business out of your life's work without running into all the demons and dragons that are waiting for you inside. And it's evolved continuously throughout the years. And then in 3-4 years ago now, I had a client walk through my door who had been a victim of satanic ritual abuse and trafficking. And it was intergenerational. So this was nothing like, she wasn't just stolen off the street like some people are. It was part of her bloodline. And so I learned about a world that I didn't know about before that. I was not brave enough to look in at it. But I had this person now that I was serving them and helping them. And so I went down the rabbit hole in a really big way and started uncovering the truth, which was devastating, I have to say. I knew it was bad out there, but I didn't have any clue how bad and how organized and how networked the whole thing is. And it was such a massive blessing to me to see the truth for what it is. And then I could stand on new ground called reality, move forward. It created all kinds of changes in my world, including bringing my King Heroes into my zone. At that time, I had been working for women for 15 years. And all of a sudden, I could help men. I had a massive healing around the masculine archetype. And developed the King Heroes Journey podcast. And now I have a mission to make an army of King Heroes, Holy Demigod being one of those.
Yeah. And in other words, the King Heroes Journey is someone who went through hell, let's put it like that, and they pulled themselves out of it. With some help, of course, but would you say that is correct?
Exactly. They pulled themselves out of it. The more, and then they can't stop themselves, because the hero's journey, it's not enough just to get past your own challenges and slay your own demons. You turn around and you want to help others do it. It's one of those immediate things. You probably have noticed for yourself if you've gone through things.
Yeah.
So yeah, the king heroes, then they take on more responsibility. They are, you know, wanting to help an entire kingdom of people in the process. And then they need a lot of support, and they can crash very easily. There was the first man who landed on my doorstep decided I was his coach. He was actually given 2 weeks to live at the time by a doctor. He had cancer, and he heard from 3 people in one day that he should go and talk to me. He hired me the next day. And at the end of our month of working together every day, he sent me a letter, and he said, "Beth, you saved my life."
Mm.
So I knew at that point, I don't take credit for it. And actually in this last 3 weeks now, he has passed away. He lived for a couple of years past that first diagnosis, but he finally did give in to his cancer.
Mm-hmm.
But in the process, it was an enormous gift to me, because I saw how wired I am now to work with men and support these men that are doing such big work in the world.
Mm. So I watched your, it's one of your recent videos. When you're going through hell, keep walking.
Yeah, keep going. Exactly.
And I couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that, yeah, of course, that stems from your personal experience and the experiences that you had with other people that you are supporting. And what I had to laugh a little bit when you mentioned that you had been attacked on social media because you stated something obvious. So how is that for you? I mean, when you start a YouTube channel, you never really know what's going to happen. And were you surprised, or are you happy with the experience? And what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, having that rebel energy, I have a certain willingness to take on a fight.
Mm.
I don't mind getting somebody's disapproval. I don't mind when they don't like me, ultimately, but I have to admit that every single time there's an attack of some kind, it's like a whoo, you know, you get it in the solar plexus, and it's one thing when strangers come on and down talk you, but it's different when it's friends and family, close friends and family. And you know, my oldest friend came and just said, "Beth, I'm so disappointed in you. I can't believe this. You know, it's over." You know, so it's painful. There's no way around the fact that there's and I would say it's something that's actually really important to go through the pain of that, rather than just blocking that pain, because otherwise you just go unconscious and you have to suppress all that stuff. So it's a constant work to go into the hell of the bad feelings around it. But it's the truth of it. If you keep going, there's always the other side. And when you get there, I notice that I'm always stronger, I'm higher, I'm happier. Thanks to one of our common friends, James True, I learned how to receive the energy when people send it my way, whether it's good energy and praise, or it's bad energy and attacks. I can still receive that energy. And as soon as I remember that they're sending me energy, then I actually feel higher and more free from it, even though they don't love me, or I even still block them on social media.
It's still prana.
Exactly. It's still energy. You got it. You got it. And as long as I'm there and open and see through the illusion of it, because the trap is that I turn around and I hate them and I demonize them. But it's really important not to do that, because then you're actually, you're back to having no cause whatsoever.
Yeah, sometimes people are just not at that stage for certain information. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That does not mean they are stupid, or it's, you know, if you had told me certain things 20 years ago, I would have probably reacted differently as well. So everybody has his or her own pace. And yeah, sometimes we are dealing with subjects that are very clear to us, but to others, it's as if you're evaporating their entire worldview.
Exactly. I was, I'm always trying to figure this stuff out if I can in any way. And I was thinking about it that, say, one of my family members comes on and he's so mad at me. He's trying to get me to agree that I won't receive health care. So if I don't get a vaccine, then he wants me to agree that I won't, tax our system if I need it. And, so that's actually wishing me harm, right? Wishing me to have no health care. That's wishing me harm. And I was trying to what the heck is that my own family would want me to suffer over this? And I saw how it's because people are under such enormous attack from our own governments, from the authorities, from, the chemicals in the food and the air and the water. At every turn, there's some kind of attack on our physical and totally our spiritual world. And so people that don't know where the attack is coming from, they're looking for something or someone to fight with to justify the feeling of it, because they're not willing to look at the real enemy.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to demonize someone like me who's annoying and saying the wrong thing or the thing that they don't agree with.
Yeah.
But
you know
in turn,
what I
yeah.
smell?
What?
I smell despair in that type of action. You are not willing to fall in line what all of us have agreed on, that would be the best for you to do. And because you are not doing that, we have to, get the heat up in the kitchen.
Exactly. Yeah, you end up kind of a scapegoat, and it's the same thing. If you can allow yourself to just be the scapegoat, that's your role, and as long as I don't turn around and do the same thing and hate them. It took me a long time to come with a comeback to him. I didn't have it at the beginning, but it's so should we, so you smoke cigarettes. So should we say you don't deserve healthcare because you smoke cigarettes? And, there's no logic in it, what people are saying.
Yeah.
But it's not a battle of logic. It's a psychic war where a lot of things don't make any sense.
Yeah, but I agree. If it's family, then it's my mother usually, she does not attack me. The only thing she's always saying, end of story. We switch the subject.
Yep, exactly. I often wonder, my parents have passed away now, and I often wonder if they were here now through this time, how gnarly it would be with me right now. It would be extremely difficult to have a relationship with them.
Do you have children?
I have one child. Yeah. 13-year-old boy.
Yeah.
I wasn't supposed to be able to get pregnant. I had my child against the odds. After all that chemotherapy, they told me that I was likely not to conceive. And all of a sudden I wanted a baby. I was already in that 11th hour. I was 38 years old. And about 5 minutes went by and I was pregnant. There was just, I wanted it to happen. And then boom, there we were.
Yeah, great.
We snuck in under the wire. Yeah.
So with this crazy situation that we are having, how are you dealing with that as a mother? What are you telling him? Does he ask what's going on here, or is he quite okay with it?
He doesn't really ask, but like all kids, he's exposed to the news and social media and all that kind of stuff is out there. And he also has known from me for years, because I actually, as I was learning the truth, I was sharing it with him. Not even really holding back in areas that I might have held back otherwise, but I have to talk to him about pedophilia because it's out there. And he could easily be a target, so he shouldn't have to think about adults having sex with children. But I just thought it's much better that he is in the know. And if it breaks some of that early innocence that he could have held on to, I just think it's better if he knows what he's really dealing with. And so when COVID hit, and it took us all, about 5 minutes to realize it was a psyop. At first you're like, what's going on here? And lockdown, and okay, I'll go and just go home. And it was fascinating because I'm, tuning into the truth media that explodes, right? Like if they were doing one podcast a week, now they're doing 3. They had 10,000 views, now they have 100,000 views. And so I'm going down the rabbit hole, and I'm quite enraged by the whole thing. Honestly, it brought up so much anger. I was spitting fire. And at the same time, it motivated me to get ready to the next level for living in a society that doesn't have the basic things that we take for granted, even electricity and food in the grocery store and all those kind of things, getting into survival mode. And I just kept including my son in the conversation. He was well aware. I was talking to his dad, and his dad revealed pretty quickly that he thought I was one of the tinfoil hat people.
Team tinfoil.
Unfortunately, yeah, exactly. So kind of unfortunate, because in a family that's very difficult to, that puts my son in the middle, but he's actually doing well. He seems to be straddling the worlds, and he seems to know what's going on. In fact, now he's starting to recognize when something is a false flag. He knows the signs. He knows how to look at it, and it's like, yes, that's awesome. Oli taught us, and now I taught my son. We pass that on. But I prefer him to know and give him a chance, because it'd be really easy to discount his ability to handle it. So there was one day when I realized, okay, it's time to go and, buy a gun. Unfortunately, now Canada shut us down. We're not able to get gun licenses anymore, thanks to the COVID situation. They actually changed the laws on us. What's that?
Thanks to
Justin Castro.
Yeah.
You got it. That's good, because, oh man, so many people think he's a hero. He's handling it so well. He's doing so well. Now that Trump guy, terrible. That's awful. But he thinks that our Justin is somehow some exception to the psychopathic leadership that we have in the world. It's like, nope, he's right in there like a dirty shirt, you guys.
There are no good leaders.
That's it.
They're all bad.
If it's that top down, if they were chosen from the top, now there's a lot of grassroots, amazing leaders, the King heroes that I support. I think I still feel like, even though I relate strongly with that anarchy community, I still believe in leadership, that it seems to be nature's way. If you get a group of kids together of different ages, the older ones start teaching the younger ones and guiding the younger ones without anybody asking them to do that. There's just something, when you know something, you want to teach the person who doesn't know, and you become a leader to them in a way.
Yeah.
But certainly decentralized leadership that's relevant to your community, your neighborhood, the people you see, the issues that are right there in front of you, that would make more sense to me.
Yeah, but this system cannot survive. It's so corrupted. There is no hope in, we build a new party.
Right.
You can vote for us now.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about, and you touched on it a little bit, the idea of freedom fighters. Here's what I think, and we don't have to agree on everything.
Sure.
My personal take is you cannot fight your way to freedom. Simply because it's first and foremost an inner process, and then you can embody that. And the meme of the freedom fighter that has been drummed into us in movies, books, and why? Because it doesn't work. And so many people are, married to that freedom fighter archetype, and a lot of them haven't even figured themselves out. And there is where I see the biggest problem. if you do not know who you are, what you're really dealing with, what is in your shadow, but you want to fight for others, difficult. What say you?
It's messy. It's a very messy thing. It's kind of another analogy which is similar. And so I work very much with the rebel archetype, the warrior archetype, both freedom fighters at their own level. The rebel is much more of a volatile fighter, and then the warrior is the one who knows how not to fight. So getting to that place of maturity and seeing, what's my hill to die on, what's my fight to fight, so I'm not just going ballistic in every direction, going out of your way to find some kind of win-win solution where nobody has to lose their life or whatever it is. So there's a certain evolution but the freedom fighter, I feel like, is a stage in the evolution of the soul. And in my body of work, the 8 archetypes that I call the journey archetypes, it starts out with the child. And the child is in denial and trying to prevent betrayal at all cost. That means they don't want to grow, they don't want to see, they don't want to for sure feel any pain. They're just, okay, I'll just go, and that's what happened to humanity right now. They just went under the covers. So, okay, I'll come out when it's all, good out there. Is it good yet? Nope. Okay, good. I'm just hiding in my covers. But if you allow yourself to be betrayed, and you must be betrayed, and most of the time you've already been betrayed, it's just a matter of allowing yourself to experience that, then the natural reaction is going to be, okay, now I'm ready to fight. This is injustice. I can't stand for it. I'm going to, even at my own peril, I'm going to be a voice for freedom. And then that rebel has to grow up too and become the warrior, get into much deeper responsibility, much more sense of, because the freedom fighter often is coming from a place of that it's personal, it's about them. Whereas the warrior can step in and really start assuming be a champion for others, take a stand for others. You've learned to take a stand for yourself. Great, that's good. Now you can start to fight for others. And even that gives way to another archetype, the nurturer, where they become, their life actually, they're living it more for others than they are for themselves. The table completely turns.
Yeah, that's a slippery slope.
Also. Exactly. Every archetype has its shadow. That, in fact, the nurturer is kind of a hallmark of the people in my world. They are ones that they not only want to help and support other people, but they have to. There's a compulsion. If somebody's suffering, they have to help. And there's a lot of ways to do that you get taken down and taken out and crash, and then secretly hate the people that you're helping, which is totally not the point. So that's, time to create good boundaries. And do you want me to keep going in the journey, by the way, as we go?
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm on a roll now. And so once you establish those good boundaries and you figure out that it's not me or them, it's all, it's all one. We have to work on all levels at the same time. That gives birth to the soul of the journey with the lover and the hedonist archetype. And that's where you give yourself permission to just put your heart and soul and beauty and pleasure into the world to create something. I've been in that mode a lot lately because just being in the fighting mode is draining and exhausting. So I'm in creative mode, busy, constructing new systems and new coaching programs and working with people. And I just stay really active in my own creative life. That way I survive it at the soul level. And that gives way to the next stage of the journey once you learn to do that in a really conscious way and in a way that connects you with a divine rather than disconnects you and just lets you go down that, hole of seeking pleasure and self-fulfillment. Then you take on the big responsibility of the king and being there, creating solutions for an entire kingdom of people. And then because we know the king archetype, we see it, this huge archetype in the world is in the shadow. They become the tyrannical ruler, the one that has no accountability whatsoever. They are the ultimate power, and as a result, they end up completely corrupted.
Mm.
And so the last stage of the journey calls them with the alchemist archetype to whose highest value is social justice, who is going to call the king to much deeper healing than they would have ever done. But if they want to truly be the benevolent leader that they are in their heart of hearts, then they need to do that very deep inner work, and to take all of the splits and the bits and the pieces of humanity, of their own humanity, of their soul, and to bring it back into wholeness. And their life and their work becomes an instrument of returning humanity back to nature. And that takes you actually all the way to the beginning of the journey again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As with the tarot, the journey of the fool that goes through different stages. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah, the hero's journey is everywhere. You can't get away from it. So I haven't created anything new so much, but I saw it from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
I came to it. In fact, the hero's journey was the very last thing that I noticed about it. I had constructed this whole archetype soup, and then I realized, I wonder if this is that archetypal journey that we're all on. And it's like, ring, there it is. Yep.
Mm. When you were struggling with your illness, was there a moment when you thought, why me? Why me?
Yeah, I think I'd be lying if I tried to say no to that. But I also had so much training at that point. I had been to India 8 times. I had learned a lot of self-responsibility. I'd learned to see that when bad things are happening out there. And I also just saw it was kind of like what you said, if it works, good. And if it doesn't, because for me to just be finding who or what to blame for being sick, it didn't work in my favor. And I thought, okay, well, I can find 100 reasons that are to blame for this. But if I ask who's responsible, I can only come up with one answer, and that's me. And that returned a lot of power into my system. As long as I was responsible for the whole thing, I could do something about it.
Yeah.
So,
and that is in general something that the medical industry does not like you to step into.
Exactly.
I had an experience with somebody who was diagnosed HIV positive. And so I initially did all the research, and then I presented it, and he decided not to take all the pills, and we kept him healthy that way. So, and then he had a health issue years later. And then one doctor said to him, yeah, if you do not start taking the pills now, you will die. You know, he unrolled the entire fear porn.
Right. Oh, been there. You're going to die. You're going to die. It's like, all right, you guys.
And then
you'll be fine.
And then he stood up and he said, okay, doctor, living is optional, dying is mandatory. Goodbye.
Wow.
So, but what I mean, do you know this channel by Chris Walk? He is also a cancer survivor. Chris
no, I'm
Cancer,
not.
that is his channel. And he interviews a lot of survivors.
Okay.
So, and what he is always saying is that because one day he felt so bad after chemo, he said, this was my last chemo, I'm going raw. And he went on a raw food diet, he healed himself. And but that is something that nobody wants you to know in the medical industry, that actually you have power and your choices can make a difference. But what they know has nothing to do with food. No. This is what we have. And then we have radiation. Radiation, really? I mean, nobody should have radiation in their body, and especially not such a vulnerable body. So
all they know how to do is cut and poison you.
yeah.
And there's a certain place for that, to tell you the truth. It's not that that's all wrong, it's just that it's not all right. Chemo does kill cancer. I could feel, I knew how cancer felt, and I knew how it felt when it wasn't there, and the chemo was killing it. But the only problem, it was killing all of me.
Yeah.
Right. So it's pretty hard to recover from. There are still shadows of that. Even 20 years later, I'm still, you could, if you put a dryer sheet on my face, I'm done. It's over for me. A dryer sheet.
Well, what is that?
Oh, maybe you don't have them in Europe. So they create these things that you throw in your dryer when you want to dry your clothes.
Okay. Yeah, I know what that is. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. They're full of chemicals and fragrances and stuff.
So and what do you mean if you put it on yourself?
I'm so chemically sensitive now that it makes me really, it makes me ill, just even if I put something close to my face like that. So if they wanted to kill me, I'm just letting your audience know, if anybody wants to kill me, they could just put a dryer sheet on my face. I'm done.
Yeah. Do you have the same with perfume?
Yes. Chemical perfumes of all kinds are the enemy to me, unfortunately. Yeah, fragrances, whether it's air fresheners, it's honestly, it's my pet peeve, because you go out into the world and everybody's car, they've got some stupid air freshener, and you go into every bathroom in public and it's just flooded with cheap, awful fragrances. There are aisles of the grocery store, I have to hold my breath when I go down them. So yeah.
In the USA, I think that was a 1-2 punch. Yeah. First, the lockdown finished a lot of small businesses, and the rest that we couldn't catch there, now we are burning them down with the riots.
Yeah.
And so, and funny enough, we have the same protests here in Germany about a guy that nobody here knows personally, that worked with that cop in a nightclub as security.
The same cop that killed George Floyd?
Yeah, okay. That allegedly killed him. So that raises a flag for me. Both of them appeared in porn movies.
No kidding. Oh God, you guys, come on.
Yeah. So
that's hilarious.
So we know that, okay, even if it's a porn movie, but they were actors.
Exactly.
Yeah? And we know how that sometimes goes with actors and crisis actors, and so and I guess you are seeing the same in Canada. Probably not all over the place, but you do see protests like that. Were you surprised that it swept over?
In a way it's surprising. In a way it's just boring, more of the same. I think that too many people weren't buying the COVID thing. There was too many people either just not caring, like they're not awakened, but they just don't care. They don't watch the TV. They don't follow what politicians tell them to do, even though they don't know what's going on, and they need to know what's going on. But at the same time, you can't control those people if they're not watching your TV. So, we had a riot, we had a demonstration here, but Canadians are very, we bow down to authority. We love that stuff here for some reason. And so it was a very peaceful protest, nothing really to write home about. I think there was 1,000 people or something, so it was a decent attendance. We're a smaller town in Winnipeg here. I know Vancouver, if you're familiar with Dan Dix at all.
Yes.
You've been seeing what the trouble he's getting into, so that's fairly intense. He was recently arrested and removed from those riots that were going on. They're looking at him like the enemy, which is fascinating because, I followed him for a while. I've interviewed him. I know his platform. I've never heard him say one racist thing, but they think of him as a white supremacist. I got called a white supremacist the other day too. It's like, you do nothing. And they label you because you're not doing something. So.
Yeah. But what I find funny is here, these people here in Germany, we have the same protests in France, in the UK, and here Canada. But none of them stood up and said one peep when they took away, when they put them into lockdown, took away their basic.
Oh, it's so sad. It's the saddest thing.
Yeah.
I know. I was part of it. A little demonstration. There was 200 people there, right? Like people just don't care. They didn't know the difference. Most of the people I talked to, aside from the, more awakened friends that I have, they're just like, oh yeah, it was nice to have a break. And, oh, the air is so much cleaner now. And there's so many bright sides. And, we really needed to change the economy, but they have no idea what's just been done. Yeah. Even if it takes 2 years to completely play out, the trigger has been pulled. That the destruction has already been done. Like you said, we are moving towards a depression that is going to be bigger than even the 1930s ever was.
Yeah, I had Stefan Verstappen on. The video has not been uploaded yet.
Oh, good.
But I think that was my grimmest interview ever.
Yes, he's very grim. He edited my book, by the way. He was so we got to know each other quite well. I've interviewed him, and yeah, he's the Grim Reaper. He's got a lot of not good perspectives, and I don't know what you think, but it's needed too, right? Because it certainly popped me up and out of my denial. That got me thinking about, okay, let's store some groceries and buy a gun and be ready,
Yeah. He very blatantly said, guys, it's over. And starting with September, we will have the supply lines will disrupt and come to an end. And by Christmas, more than 2/3 of the world will be starving.
Unfortunately, he's been right about everything so far.
Yeah.
That's the thing. All those guys following for 3 years, everything they've predicted, and it's like, oh, that happened, and that happened, and that happened.
Yeah, and he basically said from studying history, and I mean he's really well versed in history. So
exactly.
Yeah, that was a grim interview.
I believe it. I feel for you.
Yeah. He said, "Did I shock you?" And I said, "No, not really. It's very hard to shock me. Or no, not shock you, depress you. Did I depress you?" And I said,
right.
"No, it's very hard to depress you." And then he said, "Yeah, if your birthday present didn't depress you, then hardly anything will." Because I had a surgery on my birthday last year.
Okay. Right.
So, and that is what he was referring to. It was not that I got the wrong cake or anything.
Yeah. No, it's actually his newest work that he's working on about building community. It's the necessary ingredient, because if you're only delivering the bad news and you have no way to help people create hope on the other side, then you're not really helping. It's, in a way, it's just being part of the problem. If you leave people in despair, crying on the floor, and with no idea how to be empowered and get to the other side, then, when I first started waking up, there's so much to choose from in the truth world. There's just like, hundreds of channels now. And there's the ones that left me feeling hopeless and suicidal. And then there were and just to call it. And then there were the other ones that actually left me both receiving the truth, but also being hopeful. Right? I always shout out to Freeman. He was one of my first lifelines that I was able to grab on. And I just always felt better after hearing something that he said or somebody he interviewed. It always had a hopeful tone to it. There's always some kind of action that could be taken. And so it was actually through Freeman that I discovered Stephen Verstappen and James True and, a whole raft of King heroes that have a more positive message. Not to say you're trying to gloss over the negative. It's not the case, but you have to have some kind of plan on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.
For people.
And that is actually one of the reasons why many, 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 many years ago, I stopped listening to Alex Jones.
Yes.
One of the reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Many other reasons. I will not go into that.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't handle this. Everything was so sensational. And if you listen to him, the paranoia sets in really quickly. And you always had the impression martial law is just 10 minutes away.
Exactly.
And he leaves you drained. That is if other people see that differently, I'm okay with that. I just can't listen to him anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's why I do the work that I do, because I firmly believe, like, honestly, if I could save my life with this work, then it's not the work has power, you have power. And it's a means for accessing the power that's coming through you. I'm actually really clear also not to speak a new age rhetoric and narrative around that, because that's not a real true path. That's very much a diversion.
Yeah.
But using the archetypes to just see your the divine power coming through you, and not calling on archetypes and not calling on all this stuff, but what is your calling? What are you being called to? What is God asking you to do that you don't want to do, or you're in resistance about, or you're afraid to do? And that, to me, if every person on earth was to hear and follow their God-given calling, then we would be in a completely different situation. We would not let psychopaths tell us what to do.
Yeah.
We would be slaves to our purpose. Because that's what happens when you get really tuned in with your purpose, then that's the authority. Right? You answer to your God-given purpose.
Yeah.
And then there's a great feeling of freedom in it, even though the circumstances might be very far from freedom as it would be defined. I have ancestors, both my great-grandparents on my father's side went to jail for their beliefs. One was a school teacher. He was actually arrested for antagonizing the government when the communists were taking over and burning down their villages and raping their women and stealing their children. My great-grandfathers were not going to lay down and take it. They were fighters. And, they went through severe, intense hardship with enormous loss. And I'm still very much healing the ancestral wounds of what they'd been through. So I feel an obligation now to continue that work and make it not for nothing that they went through it. I think I got sidetracked there from your subject, but
no, that's perfectly okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is so many people do not even comprehend that they are governed by psychopaths.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We don't want to see it. I call this the mother wound, by the way. It's so difficult to see if you think about the government like our parent. It's a nanny state, especially as we're moving towards this global governance. And it's so much easier to have the conflict with our brothers and sisters. So the people fight with each other, whether it's over race or it's over resources or whatever the fight is about. We fight with each other because it's too frightening to have the conflict with the real source, which is the parent. Right? If you fight with the parent, then you're risking death, because in your unconscious mind, that parent represents security and safety to you. So even though, if you think about a child who's being badly abused, they are very attached to the abusing parent.
Yeah.
And they will fight bitterly not to be separated from them, because that's the psychic bond that's there. And then they will kill their brothers and sisters over that.
Trauma bonding.
Yeah, exactly. Because, you know, they're still aware that they're being harmed and they are not willing to look at who's harming them. So they enact that, they play it out literally with their siblings, with their peers, with their, you know, between men and women. This is another massive, like, let's see if there's some kind of psyop that comes down. So here we've, you know, we've got the health thing, we've got the race thing. Are they going to come at us with a gender thing? I would not be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
There's been so many, you know, now I got an email from my kid's school, which I'm really praying he's not going back to school, if we can somehow engineer that. But I got an email saying, for some reason, right on the curriculum, right coming out of the gate as they're going back to school, is all gender stuff. And I'm like, what? What is this? There's no information. This is all rhetoric and narrative.
Mm.
And the exercise was to get them to go out and find examples of where women are being stereotyped in roles of, like, being a mother or a caregiver or you know, homemaker, or all those things that we consider to be low class now.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were supposed to call it out.
What nonsense.
Like, I know.
Mm.
And we pay for this, but we don't realize it because it's, you know, we just give all our money to the government and then they do whatever they want with it. So you're not even aware of it, how it's really being used. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to ignite a gender war. That's ongoing. That's been, you know, the feminist movement was constructed to separate men and women, which is actually the most powerful bond there could ever be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with parents. Okay, I will tell a little story.
Mm-hmm.
When, as a little child, I always had this thought in my head: everything is wrong here.
Me too.
Yeah.
Same. I know.
Yeah. So I came in and I always felt as if I do not belong here. I took the wrong exit. I somehow landed here on Earth. And so
these are not my beautiful people.
Of course, I was too young to really, you know, point it out what it was, but I had this overwhelming feeling, everything is wrong here. So one day I couldn't even read, but I was flipping through a magazine. And in that magazine, I saw one, and you know how pictures tell a story sometimes better than the words that are written underneath. So there was the war between Nigeria and Biafra. And we had these huge hunger bellies with the kids in Biafra. So there were plenty of images of starving kids there. And a couple of pages later, I saw a huge truck dumping oranges into the ocean.
Oh.
Same magazine, the entire horror story in one magazine. So
right.
And as I said, I at that age I couldn't read, but I marched with that magazine under my arm. I marched to my mother and demanded answers. And
you demanded what? Sorry?
Answers.
Answers. Got it. Yeah. Yeah.
So she explained to me that these big bellies are because of hunger. And then I showed her where the oranges are being dumped into the ocean. And then she said to me, yeah, they are doing that so that the prices stay stable and the oranges do not get too cheap. Then I closed the magazine, I turned around, and it was that very moment when it dawned on me, the grown-ups have no freaking idea either what's going on here. They just pretend to know.
Totally.
So from that point on, the grown-ups were not very reliable to me. You know what I mean? It was just
I do.
You are as confused as I am. You just because I said that does not make sense, and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how again, the engineering the split between the child and the parent, because the parent, they looked like idiots. They just did. They didn't have good answers for our questions,
Yeah.
and so we didn't trust them. We couldn't turn to them, and they, I would always get this, like, shut up kind of energy. Stop it. Just like drop it. And
I'm
so
getting
then
that up to now.
up to now, yeah, exactly, still happening, exactly. So that's a huge divide when the parents can't turn to when the children don't turn to the parents anymore for guidance. What do? They turn to each other for guidance, and that nothing good can come of that, because they're just as dumb as everybody in their own age group is. And that's no surprise that they put us in schools with only our age group. It's with people we can't learn anything from. They're all at our level, right? So that keeps everybody all flatlined like that. And you move up, but then you're with all the kids, and the older you get, the more you dislike your parents, and the more you want nothing to do with them. It takes an entire lifetime to heal that. If you're lucky, you'll do it, and most people never really do it, to turn around. And I've received a lot of wisdom from my parents now, a lot of it since they died too. Like, not even in their lifetime. But that's the tragedy of all of the division that's taken place.
The other day I saw a sci-fi movie. I didn't watch it to the end. It was not really produced very nicely, but it had an interesting subject. There was a group of people on a spaceship, and an alien spaceship, and they were held there in the dungeons on that ship and were tormented psychically. And their fear and their torment was the thing that fueled the ship.
Oh, wow. Oh, man, they're just telling us, hey? They're just telling us.
Yeah.
Point blank.
Yeah,
Point
that is
blank.
exactly what I thought. And I don't care if somebody will, sometimes you get these comments, there is no space and the earth is flat. Be that as it may, I don't really care, because we have bigger fish to fry than quarreling about that. But that metaphor, that is exactly what's going on, that our fear and our torment is fueling the system.
Yeah, bingo. And that's why it's so important to do that inner work and gain peace with yourself, because that was actually my big question. I'd been doing all of this work since I survived cancer, and on a very strong mission. It always felt urgent to me. It took me 20 years to write my book, but I did that. And, it just felt like we must do the inner work. If you don't do the inner work, then you're forever going to be confused about, you'll never actually see the enemy for who it is, because your demons within are so multi-layered and so thick that you don't stand a chance to deal effectively in the world. Right? The first time somebody insults you or tries to take you down, you're going to be triggered, you're going to attack them back, and you're going to be no better off than anybody who doesn't know anything. So if you have that constant vigilance and discipline of doing the inner work, and letting your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings, and your programming go, that's when you start to become unstoppable and formidable. It's the big fear of dying, that if they can only torture us with death if we fear it and are unconsciously fearing it. As soon as you're consciously afraid to die, then it starts to become workable. You can actually do something with it. You can release it. But as long as it operates like anxiety, and every second person you meet is on anxiety medication, they're all suffering it because we're under attack. But it's an invisible enemy if you're not willing to look at it. So I feel like every human being is obligated to do their inner work, to face their fears.
Yeah.
And one way or another, like your life is going to bring up your fears, or you can be the warrior that brings it up yourself by doing hard things, by taking risks and putting yourself out there, especially outside of your own comfort zone.
Mm.
And that's what I recommend is, because then you're doing the same job, but you're in control. So obviously you're the one who's pulled the trigger on all of this. And then it's more fun by far.
Mm.
Then you're not the victim, that you don't get into that, why me, poor me. I in writing my book, it was quite a hero's journey all by itself. Really intense. And towards the end, every time we thought we were finished, we weren't finished. I had to die every day for like 15 days in a row. I had to, like, just one thing or another. It was some kind of knock 'em down. And, it challenged me to my core, and I kept wanting to blame somebody. I kept thinking, like, whose fault is this stupid thing that's, and it's like, well, Beth, it's your fault because you wrote the book. Ah, right. Okay. So me again. And I just couldn't find anybody to blame. I had to keep just assuming responsibility. Yep, this is all my fault. I made all my own trouble, and then I'll clean up and I'll deal with it. So it's extremely empowering and humbling.
Yeah. Another thing why people probably do not like to look at certain subjects. I had a conversation with a friend, and she said to me, you know what, Judith? It's not that I do not believe you. And a lot of things that you're saying, I know them. I just didn't pull them together in that way and connected the dots. But it does something to me. It does something to me, and it makes me really feel bad and depressed. And so I don't want to know. So how did you manage that, to look at it, but at the same time have a certain distance so that it does not eat you up from the inside? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And in this case, in this system, it's actually not about having any distance. It's the opposite of, and neither is it about getting stuck in it, because that's the problem, that, you get consumed by it and you can't see anything else. You can't even live a nice life. But if you go all the way through the energy, you might have seen some mermaid stuff around in my world. And that's what the mermaid is representing. It's the ability to navigate the very difficult feelings. Like, when you think about it, the worst thing a human could ever experience is that they are not going to survive it. Even though it's the one reality that we already talked about, that it's a given. Nobody gets out alive. So, by going into it, and you might have heard me say this already on an interview or two, but I never get tired of saying it, that the buffalo, they know when a storm is coming, they know to run right into it. If they run away from it, that storm could chase them for days. But if they run into it, they know that that's the fastest way to the other side. They're smart. Their instincts work for them in that way. Even we might look at them and say, like, what are you doing? You're going into the storm. So it's rather than distancing yourself and gaining objectivity, it's about going right into it. And anything that you're trying to maintain separateness from, it's going to suck the life out of you. It's going to take constant management. You're going to have to be constantly doing this with information and energy and your own inner feelings. You're forever doing this. And that leaves you split, whether that's from a relationship where you don't want to hear the truth, or it's part of yourself you don't want to feel. So to me, the whole game, or the goal of the whole life is wholeness. To come into that experience. And to me, that's, bliss is nice, peace is nice, joy is great, all that kind of happiness, great. But there's nothing like wholeness. That experience where you're no longer a bunch of little pieces and a bunch of different opinions and a bunch of different roles, and having to compartmentalize this part of your heart off because it's just too intense to feel it. and coming into that place where you realize, like, I'm just one person. I'm not a bunch of little pieces, and all of the energy floods back to you. So whatever hardship you have to overcome, you're doing it with so much energy. Like, that's how I healed of cancer. Because I don't know how to heal from cancer. I was a dying person for 3 years, but it was just in reclaiming the energy and not being separate from my rebel anymore. I said, okay, all right, you can have me. Shadow, light, all of it. Bring it on. I'm going to go through it and face it. And it was the biggest, face my biggest fears of who I felt myself to be. And it was by doing that that I gained my power and I gained my life.
Yeah, maybe I have to rephrase that. I didn't really mean distance, but what I meant was that without you being emotionally crushed, because then you are not useful either, because let's say you come across the first time the entire bottomless pit of pedophilia and child trafficking and everything that is connected to it. It can be quite overwhelming.
Totally. Devastating. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's, that's the difference between, so the way I put it out is that every human experience is a door from the lowest human experience of apathy all the way up to the highest experience of peace, of some kind of peace. But they are all a trap in two ways. One is you avoid the door, and second is you get stuck in the door. And you become addicted to that, whatever experience of apathy, grief, fear, lust, anger, pride, courage, acceptance, peace. You can just feel like you, and especially people get addicted to the higher experiences. That you see all the spiritual people, they're so into peace, but that peace, it actually degrades into apathy. So you see a lot of spiritual people out there and they just don't care. They can't bring themselves to become passionate about anything because they're all blissed out. And so this, this thing is, it's a door. You have to keep going. If you don't keep going, you won't see that you're actually free on the other side. And what it means is that your human experience, your thought, your feeling, your belief, or the program that you're dealing with actually is your freedom in disguise. So if you go through and you receive what it has to offer you, you reclaim that energy, then that's, to me, the constant destiny, that we're here to see through the illusion of who we think we are and actually know who we are.
Yeah, those blissed out people, some of them, they do not really strike me as blissed out. Sometimes I have the feeling they are automatons.
That's it. They turn into robots because, if you look at the scale of emotion, I'm a big fan of Lester Levinson's work. And there's one other, I think it's David Hawkins, if I'm getting his name correct. They both, about the same time in the 1950s, discovered the scale of action, is how Lester describes it, but it's a scale of emotion. And it is that apathy is the very lowest, and then it's grief and fear and lust, anger, pride, courage, acceptance, peace, all the way up. And it's the lower emotions are the ones that tend to be the bigger trap. But it's all that entire scale, the higher you go up, the easier it is to release. So it's the goal to bring yourself into the higher energies, not because that's where you want to live. It's because that's where you can do the most work from. So people that are just blissing out and they get themselves into peace, they feel like they're done. They're like, I'm so good now. I'm perfect. I'm all finished. But really, what's after, if it goes from apathy to peace, what's after peace on the scale is more apathy. It's the next layer of apathy. So that's where you often find them in that. They're like you said, automatons. They're numbed out.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
So when you talked about your guru that turned out to be a pedophile as well, what I find interesting in those groups, and there are different stages to that. Not every group might be, but you have sometimes really full-blown narcissists running the show in cults, in certain spiritual groups. Really,
Exactly.
really creepy. And some of the members are fighting tooth and nails to protect them, which is very strange to me.
It's that same mother wound, right? The guru represents the parent.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what was going on. He was in our community. There was a lot of abuse going on. Many women were being sexually abused. There was only 2 children that I knew of, just to say pedophile. It wasn't a pedophile ring or anything, but it actually could have been too, because you don't know everything that's going on behind those scenes. And they gave him all of the power. It wasn't him taking it. They were like, oh, here's my money and here's my body. And, honestly, in this, I might have been in the very same boat, because everyone was trying to get close to him. I was trying to do it too. It's like, oh, you want to be close to that guy? Then, we're doing it to ourselves. He's not coming up and putting a gun to anybody's head.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is why I get your concept of the hero's journey, but in general, Mark Devlin also talked about that. In general, I don't like heroes, especially not those that are being presented to us via media, movies, music, sports, whatever it might be, because it's always a trap. There's always a catch to it. And especially if you're very young, a teenager, then you have your favorite rock stars or movie stars or whatever. And then later on, maybe it's sports stars or politicians or the guru or whoever it might be. But at the end of the day, it always burns down to giving your power away.
Yeah, they've totally corrupted the archetype of the hero completely, right? So the fact that a movie star or a rock star would be a hero, they're just getting on a stage and singing a song. That's not heroic. What did they do that's heroic? Nothing, right? The true meaning of the hero is to slay the demons. And it's not enough just to slay the demons. You have to come out the other side and help other people do it. That's much harder. Taking responsibility for helping others, so that's they've turned it inside out. Like everything is completely inverted and corrupted. So that our people that we call heroes right now, again, sports stars. So you did something difficult with your body. Good for you. That is an accomplishment, but that doesn't make you a hero, right? Who did you serve in the process? To me, it's actually one of the most, I apologize to any sports stars out there, but I just think it's one of the most selfish things that you could be doing.
Yeah,
now I know they
forget you, Beth.
It's true. Yeah. I always think so. Exactly. Yeah.
Snatched away during a Zoom talk.
Yeah, exactly. Judith was the witness.
I have it in my file.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. Yeah, no, that was basically the point. It's just when we look at a Britney Spears or Lady Gaga or somebody, and that we'd call them our hero. It's just nothing
Germany,
like that.
When you say to somebody you are Gaga, then you're basically telling them you are insane.
Right. Well, not surprising. They would give her a name like that to take the concept everybody knows it means insanity, and then to give it this high elevated, and she's $1 billion in value, probably worth way more dead than alive, which is a big problem. The veneration of these people, that putting them up on a pedestal and thinking they have the life that you want, making everybody hungry for that kind of life, when that life really is hell. They are the most controlled of anybody in society. They step out of line. They don't toe the party line, and they can be finished with.
Mm.
And they have insurance policies hanging over their head, right? They are absolutely worth more dead. So it's not easy, or, it's not of any cost to their handlers to finish with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Beth, what are you doing now? You are a business coach, and you also coach people that come with their personal problems, if I
Right.
understood you correctly. So what is your combination? What are you doing there exactly?
Yeah, so I help them to, if they want to build a business out of their life purpose, that's where I was at. I was working in the corporate world so I could do my thing on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And then I flipped it and I made my whole life into, like, my business is always my purpose. So I feel so fortunate every single day when I go to work. I feel like I'm living inside my purpose. So I help people to build that kind of a service-based business. If they're tired of, always having the two jobs. So I've got a client right now who's extremely successful in the truth world, but has to work a job in order to pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
So he wants that to be not the case anymore. Just he can live fully through his purpose and have that be his livelihood. So I help them to do that. I also help people at the other end of the spectrum where they don't know what they're here for yet, to actually find their sacred purpose, to dig in and see what the blueprint of their life is all about. What are they being called for, to help them hear that and to start taking actions along that level. As I mentioned with the King Heroes, I help them to survive the stress and the responsibility and often the crash that comes when they take on helping a lot of people. And helping them to sort that out. Also, the newest thing, inspired by the global so-called alleged pandemic, was to create a coaching certification program. Because I've been doing this since I survived cancer. I have actually a lot of pride in my coaching skills. I've gained, thousands and thousands of hours experience in this. And I thought, what, if the psychopaths can do that to us out there, I can give myself permission to run this certification program, become a certifying body, and pass on these skills that I have. So, and that's been amazing, to tell you the truth. It was very well received. The first group that I'm running through it, they were having such beautiful experiences around it. Gives me a new challenge. I haven't taught this stuff before, and I'm getting to see, I always need the next challenge. I can't sit still for 5 minutes. There's going to be something. Some people could just like rinse and repeat. That's not me at all. So it's pretty exciting. I love teaching people how to be coaches. Mm-hmm. It's such a needed thing. And to me, it's becoming more and more needed as we go along. Suicide rates are up 900%. And there's more and more reason for people to go down emotionally, physically, whatever it is, and to have them, in a position where they feel like they can help someone transform and get to a new place, then that feels extremely worthwhile to me.
Mm. Many people never ask the question, why am I really here?
Exactly. They'll get forced at some point. It's usually they get scared, they have a car accident, their wife leaves them. It's some kind of a shock to the system. COVID did it to a lot of people. They were like, oh my God, what's going on? Who am I? What am I doing here? It can also, they have the opposite effect where they go more asleep because of the shock. Because at the end of the day, we all have free will, and it's our choice to wake up or not wake up. We have to choose it.
Yeah, so, I guess for you it was maybe a little bit similar.
Oh, absolutely.
I always had, out of the blue, people that I didn't really know very well. Out of the blue, they sometimes come to me, sit down, and drop all their problems and everything that's going on, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, wow, so why? I'm not your best friend. I'm not we hardly ever talked to each other, but yeah, here I am. And I'm sitting there and somebody is going through the garbage and is laying it all out for me. Did you have that as well?
Absolutely. All my life, I was that go-to person that people brought all their problems to. And I found it enormously frustrating because, for the most part, they just want you to hear their problem and they don't want to do anything about it. They don't want your advice. They certainly don't want you to help them fix it. And so that's why I find it so satisfying that I am now paid to help people with their problems. So when people come to me and they invest in it and they've got some skin in the game, they do follow my advice. They do let me help them. That's what they're asking for.
Yeah.
And so it gives me permission to also, that when people just come to me randomly now, I mean, this I take on a moment to moment basis too, because I'm not having a cold hard boundary, but if I feel it, I will just tell somebody like, listen, I do this for a living. Would you like to really make a change? Or are you just wanting someone to listen to you? And I also give myself permission, because my friends, they know not to just come and complain to me. I will listen to a point, but I'm not serving you by just letting you stay stuck in this place. You know, I'm wired to help. That's who I am. So, I was with a dear friend the other morning. She just happened to be going through some terrible things. And I sat there and I listened and I listened and I listened. I bet it was 40 minutes that I hadn't said anything. She was just kept telling me. And then I thought, should I offer her help? I said, God, show me if I should help her. And then next thing you know, I said, would you want some help with this? And she was very willing. We went into it. And in the course of maybe another half an hour, she completely got to a new place. And she wrote me, I wonder if I have it handy here, if I can quickly read this. She wrote me a note. She herself is a therapist. Let's see. There it is. Is it okay if I read this to you?
Yeah, sure.
So she said, as a women's soul coach and psychotherapist, I often am the one holding space for the depth of our healing. When Beth supported me in my own emotional release, I welcomed it. Rarely have I met someone who can hold the depth of my inner process, and Beth met me there. She held sacred space and guided me deeper into the core of my block until there was a huge release and profound knowing. She can go there, and we need people who can go there. So that was a very high compliment that, if you're a helper, I actually do recommend finding some way, because it's not enough to just know your purpose and even to live your purpose, but the next level, it's about being valued for your purpose. Because otherwise you're going to resent people. You're going to help them. You're going to be sucked dry yourself. The chapter in the nurture in my book is a really important one. I have people remarking practically every day about it, that they're learning so much, because you do that swing from helping no one to helping everyone, back to helping no one. They're both awful situations that leave you drained and feeling, I've got a friend right now. They're a very nurturing person, and they want nothing to do with me. All of a sudden, obviously they hit the wall with something or other. I don't know what it was. And it's classic, and that's it.
Yeah, I came to a point where it's not that I'm not listening, or let's say offer some ideas or support, but if I sense that no, really, she is just using me as a emotional garbage bin, then I pull the plug, and I'm ruthless that way. Once I've pulled the plug, it's done. It's very, very hard to come back from that.
Right. Got it. Yeah, it can be ruthless, but at the same time, it can be a favor, because then if you're not, you know, everything can be done with kindness, of course, but if you're not helping that person who can't be helped, you'll actually be free to help someone who does want the help.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you're serving way more by rejecting the people that are just wanting to, you know, because they like to hear the words come out of their mouth, but they actively, or not actively, it's not, that's not fair, but they're trying to stay stuck, and they just want to let off some steam, and they feel better when they're saying all the stuff that they don't like. But you know for a fact that all they're doing is staying in their rat trap and continuing to have the same identical life, because they'll come to you with the same story every time.
With different actors.
Yeah, exactly. And it's humbling, because I'm the same. You know, I've got a coach. I was crying on her shoulder this morning, and it's my same movie. It's the same darn movie, never changes. But I have a lot of willingness to heal and get to the other side at the same time. So she doesn't get tired of me.
Yeah. Or, you know, that all of a sudden you are in this position where, you know, they expect you somehow to carry them to the other side.
Right.
You do the work. You do the work, and
Yeah.
I'm just, but it doesn't work that way. You have to do it yourself.
Totally. I remember the first time I hired my own coach, and I thought, okay, good. Now I paid. I'm done. You take over. My work is over. And it was like, oh, it doesn't work that way? Ah, okay. I still have to do the work? Okay. Got it now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we all have still a lot to do and to learn.
It's endless. Doesn't matter how much you learn, there's more to learn. So
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Beth, I thank you so much for coming.
My great pleasure.
Yeah. And we certainly didn't talk the last time.
Yes, I would love to speak with you again. It'd be lovely.
We will do that. And I wish you all the best on your personal journey.
Thank you very much.
I mean, you've beaten, let's say, a huge enemy, although I do not really like the word enemy in that, but you know what I mean, to overcome this and get out of it in one piece and with a positive outlook. Chapeau.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay. So that was it. Night flight for today with the wonderful Beth Martens. We see you all next time. Stay safe from tyranny and stay sound out there. Bye-bye.